You hear the terms bright, medium and low light all the time when it comes to houseplants, but what do they actually mean? I mean, how can you really tell if your plant is getting medium or low light? Where do you draw the line? This is something I've long wrestled with myself, so after watching a video by Jeff over at Everything Plants where he used a light meter, I was sold, so I bought one myself. After using it in my home, I was kind of blown away by the light that I thought my plants were getting versus the reality. Hint: not enough. I'll show you some examples in just a little bit and the nifty tactics I'm using to increase light in my home because it's much needed. Before we get into all that though, there's a couple of things you need to know first. So the light meter I use measures light in either lux or foot candles. They're pretty similar, but I've been using foot candles mainly because it's a smaller number that I can get my head around, and also because this is what Jeff uses. So what the jolly uncle is foot candles. Imagine you have a flashlight and you turn it on in a dark room. The light from the flashlight spreads out and illuminates the area around it. Now think of foot candles as a way to measure how bright that illuminated area is. The term foot candles comes from the idea that it measures the amount of light that falls on an area the size of 1 square foot. So if you have a light source and place a square foot size surface 1 foot away from it, the number of foot candles will tell you how much light is hitting that surface. For example, if you have a house plant and you want to know how much light it's getting, you can use a light meter which measures foot candles. In case you're wondering, the term foot candles comes from an historical use of candles as a source of light, and it's something we're not really shook off since. Bright light is like being outside on a sunny day. It's the strongest and brightest light that plants can get. For houseplants, bright light is usually above 1,000 foot candles. This is a lot of light, simply unachievable in the majority of my home, as you'll see shortly. Plants that need bright light thrive when placed near a super sunny window or under special grow lights that emit intense light. Think succulents and cacti. Medium light conditions are a bit less intense than bright light, but still great for your plants. It's like being in a room with lots of windows or indirect sunlight. Medium light typically ranges from 500 to 1,000 foot candles. Plants that prefer medium light can be placed a few feet away from a window where they receive some sunlight but not too much direct exposure. Low light is like being in a room with only a little bit of natural light, or being far away from a window, and is in the range of 50 to 500 foot candles. Plants can survive with less light, but will probably grow much slower. The spot in front of my living room where I keep my mixed pothos planter is only getting 400 foot candles on a bright but quite cloudy day. Yes, 400 foot candles. Not great. I thought this spot was one of my brightest, but it's actually medium light, even though it's about 2 feet away from the window. If I can't get good light here, then life really is going to be a struggle for me. The windowsill in front of my sink is getting 800 foot candles, which is just shy of high light. I thought these guys were getting a nice wide view of the sky, but apparently it's not enough. The spot where I keep most of my houseplants in front of my large dining room window is getting just about 1,000 foot candles. This was on a relatively cloudy afternoon, so not the brightest part of the day. I'm relieved that the spot where I keep a lot of my plants is just about high light. In the morning, this jumps up to about 1,500 foot candles, so I'm comfortably in the high light zone. Phew. This next example is one that really shook me. My dining room fireplace mantle gets a paltry 50 foot candles. I mean, I might as well have Harry Potter looking after these under the stairs. No wonder I don't see much growth for them. I almost feel sorry for them. I've always thought my bedroom windowsill was the brightest spot in my home because there's a nice large unobstructed view of the sky for the plants there. It's where I keep most of my succulents and cacti. It just about gets into the high light zone at 1,100 foot candles. It's not amazing though, is it? Basically, it's a minor miracle that I've been able to get a nice collection of plants in my home. And by the way, if you're interested in getting a light meter for yourself, then I've got it listed in my Amazon store, which is linked in the description to this video. So getting good natural light into my home for my plants is a real challenge to say the least. My house faces east or west, so both sides enjoy a bright half of the day and suffer a darker half of the day. Together with the fact our climate isn't the brightest means my plants just struggle to get the light they need. So what what options are there to increase the light in our homes? There are two main approaches: maximising natural light and supplementing with artificial light. When it comes to artificial light, I'm a big fan of Sansi, and it just so happened to be the sponsor of today's video. These lights are giving me so many options for giving my plants the light they need. As I mentioned, the fireplace mantle in my dining room is one of the darkest spots I have plants, getting only 50-foot candles of light. With the Sansi adjustable clip-on grow light beaming down on them, it jumps up to 500-foot candles, which is medium light. I really like this clip-on unit for how versatile it is. You can more or less clip it anywhere there are plants. They use quality optical lenses that concentrate the light onto your plants, making them grow better. And Sansi lights have 3 times more intensity than other lights with the same power. Why does that matter? Well, it means your plants will grow stronger and won't end up all stretched out and weak. You know, when plants get super tall with skinny stems. This won't happen with these lights to make sure your plants stay healthy and look awesome. Also, the lenses they use make sure the light spreads evenly all over your plants so they get a nice consistent dose of energy. This means your plants will grow in a nice organised way and look Instagram worthy, which is what everyone wants. As well as light fixtures, they also do a range of bulbs that you can just plug into regular light fixtures. I've got a Calafea Elga grass in a dark corner of my living room, which is getting about 50-foot candles of light. With a Sansi 10-watt grow bulb in the light that hangs over it, this goes up to a much more respectable 500-foot candles, which is medium light. But when I stick in the 30-watt bulb, this increases to a juicy 1500 candles, which is comfortably in the highlight zone. And they use full spectrum natural light, which is just like sunlight. And this is the light you want, rather than those red and blue lights that you see everywhere. Not only is it easier on the eyes, but it also helps your plants grow better. And I've also never seen them flicker, so they don't hurt your eyes. These chips are super friendly to your eyes, and they give you the best colour representation. Your plants will be like, wow, it looks so good under these lights. I've also found them to be long lasting too, having no issues with any of the bulbs I've had for a couple of years now. And Sansi lights are made with ceramic technology that helps them last longer and keeps them super efficient, so you save money on your energy bills as well. You gotta love that. They've also got all the safety features you'd expect from a grow light, which is super important seeing as you'll be having them on for many hours every day. They have ETL certification, which means they're extra safe to use. You don't want to mess around with lights that don't have any safety certifications. That's just asking for trouble. So check out the link to Sansi's website in the description to this video and use Sheffield15 as a code at checkout for a 15% discount on all their lighting products. There are tons of options available, so you should find something to suit your setup. Like I say, I've got the clip-on grow light fixture that I've placed over my plants on my fireplace mantle, and a few of their bulbs that I can plug and play into most existing light fixtures in my home. A neat little hack for your grow lights is to plug them into a timer or even a smart timer. This way you can set and forget them to come on and off at certain times every day. I'm a forgetful soul. I was often forgetting to turn my grow lights on until I plugged them into a timer, and my plants are loving me for it. And Sansi have just released a clip-on light with a timer as part of the unit too, so you can have the lights on for 4, 8 or 12 hours a day automatically without the need for a separate timer unit. When your house isn't blessed with tons of natural light, it becomes super important to maximise windowsill space. You want as many plants near your window as possible. I've created extra room on my windows by adding a wooden shelf on both windows in my living room and dining room so I can stack my plants. It's like a multi-storey home for my plants. And when I say I did this, I mean I got someone else to do it for me. I'm not remotely handy when it comes to DIY. Not only does it increase the number of plants I can give good light to, it also looks fantastic if I do say so myself. I've got a hedge in front of my living room window, which means plants placed on my windowsill didn't get the full benefit of good afternoon light. Now that they are raised on a top shelf, they get lots more light and are much happier. In fact, the windowsill below gets about 400-foot candles, which is just about medium light, and the top gets about 1000, which is just about highlight. Happy days. Basically, the ones at the top are getting a wider view of the sky, which should always be your goal. Another Another way to maximise window real estate is to have hanging plants in front of them. I've got a couple of macrame hangers in my living room and dining room with 2 plants hanging from the wall. It's fairly easy to set up, and I did this one myself. I drilled in a shelf bracket into the wall, screwed a hook into it for the plant to hang from. Not the greatest setup, but it does a job. You can easily pick up macrame hangers, and you can even make them yourself if you're crafty. The plant in my living room is getting about 500 foot candles, which is medium light, even though it's right in front of my living room window. I just can't win. I think this is because the sun comes around the other side of the window, so this plant only sees the sun right at the end of the day. Probably. Who knows at this point? A crafty little solution to get even more plants near your window is to use wall hooks for your plants to anchor onto. This is super useful for plants like pothos and philodendron. I've got a pothos devil's ivy trailing along my picture owl in my dining room, and I'm beginning to snake one end across my large window. It's been a long time in the making because, I apparently have terrible light in my home, but I'm excited to see how this one is turning out. You can put hooks anywhere you want really. Walls next to your windows and doors are great, and vining plants will love growing up them. Don't underestimate the power of a light coloured wall. Sounds like a stretch, I know, but in my opinion, light coloured walls can make a bit of a difference to bounce light around the room. It's not going to change a dark room from low light to bright light, but it might make it palatable for some plants. All the walls in my house are light coloured, and we did this entirely for the benefit of our plants. No, that's a lie, we didn't, but they don't need to know that. In a similar vein, but slightly better, is mirrors. All you need to do is hang a big mirror in your room and put your favourite plants there, especially the ones that love sunlight. When you place plants in front of a mirror, the mirror reflects light back onto them, giving them extra light to grow better. This is super useful if your room doesn't get much natural light, like if your windows are small or face the north direction and you're in the northern hemisphere. The mirror also makes your plants look even cooler because it creates the illusion that they're bigger and fuller. So even if you have small plants or limited space, they'll still look amazing in front of your mirror. In my living room, which faces west and has a fireplace, I have a big mirror hanging above the mantle. I put a bunch of plants in front of it and they seem relatively happy. A top tip when it comes to light in your plants is they don't necessarily have to keep rotating them. I know you've been told lots of time to rotate your plants every week. Sure, for lots of plants this is a great way to get a full look, but some plants look much better left to grow in one direction, and to understand what those plants are, you really need to watch this video next.